Hello and welcome to this Powerphone webinar, Making Protocols Work for You. My name is Dennis Young, Marketing Manager for Powerphone. Before we begin the presentation, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded and made available after the presentation. You can actually just use the link that you used to get here to see that recording. To ensure the best possible audio experience, your mics have been muted. So if you have any questions, please use the question tab on your webinar control panel. You can see that at the bottom right of your screen. You can ask questions anytime, and we'll answer them at the conclusion of this presentation, time given. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to our presenters, Aaron Winslow and Larry Hunter. Aaron is an implementation manager for Powerphone. Aaron is a public safety veteran with experience as both a first responder and a 911 dispatcher. Before joining Powerphone, Aaron served as a supervisor and training manager for a dispatch center in Virginia, leading a number of successful training and technology initiatives. As a Powerphone implementation manager, Aaron works with PSAPs across the country to deploy Total Response, our emergency call handling system. Aaron believes very strongly in the importance of structured call handling and is looking forward to sharing this information with you today. Now, we also have with us today Larry Hunter. Larry's a training manager at Sugarland Public Safety Dispatch in Sugarland, Texas. Now, Sugarland has been a customer of Powerphone's for years now, and they have firsthand experience adapting protocols to meet their agency's needs. Larry has been in the 911 industry since 1999 and with Sugarland since 2017. Married with 6 children, he is also very happy to be in the office streaming with us here today. So, without further ado, Aaron and Larry.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. First, I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. We've got, like Dennis said, a full house, so we're really excited about this. Let me share my screen with everybody so that way y'all can see this presentation. All right, here we go. So like Dennis said, we're going to talk about making call handling protocols work for you. He already gave an introduction to Larry, but just a couple of points about Sugarland. They have a population of about 118,000 people. They deployed Total Response in 2014, and they have made a number of customizations on their own for their protocols. They handle calls for police, fire, and medical, so they are using all 3 portions of our program, and they have a very high standard of care that they've initiated. This is a huge part of how they've managed to do that. Would that be correct, Larry?
Pretty much. We just do for fire and EMS, but not the police side.
Okay. So a little bit about Powerphone for those of you who don't know. Our mission statement is to leverage people, processes, and technology to empower public safety. So at Powerphone, we are about empowerment. We want to empower the dispatchers to be able to do their jobs to the best of their ability. Quick facts, 37 years in 911, over 500,000 people trained by us, and we have over 700 systems deployed worldwide. Also 5 issued U.S. patents for our Total Response. So just a few things about us. We're not brand new kids on the block with this, but we're doing something a little bit different. And something that we have learned is those that teach learn. So we are learning as we're going through this process with everybody. I know every agency I go to, I always learn something new that I didn't know before. And not only that, we can take protocol customizations and use them to make our product better. So, and sometimes it can help a neighboring agency. We may have one agency ask for a customized protocol or procedure, and then we go to another agency and, oh, wow, this is a great idea for them. So that brings us, though, to Staffing, I know, is a huge issue for all centers. And we have a staffing poll that should be coming up.
Yep. So if everybody goes to their little chat bubble, you'll see polls to the very right-hand side. It's next to people, chat questions, and it goes polls. And you should be seeing a poll that says, are you having staffing issues at your agency?
Almost seems like it should be a rhetorical question in this field.
So it's actually looking like 46% of people so far. Well, it's split. Yes, everybody's having staffing issues.
I think that's going to be a never-ending issue here. So one thing is minimum requirements for every call. We all know, everyone who's in the 911 business knows, every call, as long as I've been in this business, you need to get address details, caller details, incident specifics, and then you need to dispatch the responders. But nowadays, there is so much more involved. Dispatchers are held to a different standard. It's not like it used to be back when I started, and even back then the standard was different. But today, call takers and dispatchers do so much, much more. I mean, they handle asking questions, giving, not just sending the correct response, but giving, good information and pre-arrival instructions. So that is a huge difference and something that has changed as we go through time. So what are protocols? Well, protocols are structured information gathering. Basically, they're incident-specific lines of questioning that help to gauge the severity and immediacy of the response. If you have a burglary, is it happening now? Is the person still in your home? Or is it something that happened while you were gone? You've been gone for a week and you've come back and you don't know when it happened. That makes a big difference in response. Not only that, but protocols help ask questions about scene safety, evidence preservation, because you want to, if you can provide those instructions, do that. You want to make sure that your caller stays safe and they do what they can to preserve evidence if at all possible. But you also want to gauge scene safety for responders. That medical call might have something dangerous going on in the background. So we need to make sure that everybody's safe when they go as well. Also, we get directions and descriptions from the protocols. What's the best way to come into the scene? If it's a scene where, you're coming, say, to a hiking trail or onto a warehouse site, maybe that has chemicals on scene. So that makes a big difference. And getting those descriptions from your callers of that warehouse site, of where are you on the trail? What do you see around you? Those types of questions are asked through protocols. Also, pre-arrival instructions to callers. Pre-arrival is not just EMD nowadays. Pre-arrival is, like I said before, evidence preservation. How do you get out of that burning building? Or if you're stuck in a burning building, how do you protect yourself if you can't get out until help can arrive? And it also allows for the dispatchers to get updates for responders that are en route. Not every call requires updates, but you want to be able to get that when you can. So benefits, and as I go through this, I'm going to have Larry weigh in some on benefits of protocols. One of the biggest things is you can standardize information gathering. Not every call is going to be the same. However, you can standardize your information gathering so that way they're treated with the same level of integrity for every call. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. It also helps with turnover and staffing issues. You don't have that one person, if you have that one person leave or retire that has a wealth of information, but you've customized your protocols. So that means that next time, if that person leaves, some of that information is still left behind for future people to use. 0-minute response time. Response begins as soon as that call is answered. We all know that dispatchers, whether federally recognized or not, dispatchers are first responders. They are the first person on the scene. So being able to give pre-arrival instructions and to get all of that information, that is help immediately until responders can arrive. Not only that, but when we have high turnover with police officers, firefighters, they're short-staffed as well, and you have longer response times, but you have that dispatcher that can give those life-saving instructions over the phone. That can make a world of difference to those who are waiting for somebody to get there. Also, increased professionalism. It creates trained, qualified virtual responders. It gives you that information for those dispatchers who maybe you're in a rural center and you don't have a lot of people working at a time. You could have somebody working by themselves, especially overnight. Well, you don't want your newbie who's never had a gunshot victim before with nothing to help them. This can help the dispatcher handle that type of situation that comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning and nobody's there to help them. They've got to figure it out. So this isn't just figure it out, fly by the seat of their pants. This gives them an opportunity to ask the right questions and get some really good information and know what to tell the caller. All of that really leads to less stress and more job satisfaction, hopefully ultimately decreasing your turnover. Larry, do you have some more that you'd like to add to this or any specific examples?
Yeah, definitely. Is what you say is it really hits home about dispatchers being classified as first responders. We do so much as dispatch. In all actuality, when you take that 911 call, you are incident command and you are command of that scene until someone else takes over that command. So having these protocols is extremely beneficial, especially for all personnel, both someone from day one to someone that's been here over 20 years. It's a very good tool. That way we're all on the same page. And I do a lot of training with our agency, and a new hire, after 3 weeks of being here in a classroom setting, they're able to go out and take most fire calls, most medical calls with ease. They have that training, they have that structured protocol cadence that we do. And I love how Powerphone has things set up for them. Other things that Powerphone has set up is right now we're going through the pandemic with training. It's hard to get people out to training and stuff. So to increase that professionalism, we have to recertify every 2 years in each, like fire, we have to certify every 2 years, medical 2 years, and it's all online based training. So that's been really beneficial for our staff. It's all virtual, and part of that virtual training includes telecommunicator CPR, which is a new thing here in Texas. It's a state law that requires all of our dispatchers to be certified and trained in telecommunicator CPR, and Powerphone has made that possible for us. And and just another piece of what you were saying about protocols enhance responder safety. One example of that with Powerphone is like a suicidal type call. Instead of going straight to vital signs, it goes straight into the primary questions, where it's going to ask those scene safety, officer safety, responder safety questions before it launches into the medical vital signs. So it's very beneficial.
Yeah, thank you for that, Larry. You make some really great points, especially, when you're talking about the new laws with TCPR. They've done the same thing here in Virginia, which is where I am. And by January 1, every telecommunicator has to be trained in TCPR, and it has to be offered. So, yeah, that's a great point that you make, is that as laws change, if you can customize your protocols, then that can change as well. some more benefits. We were talking about enhanced responder safety too. Information really is power, and protocols should always address scene safety. You're not just looking at what's going on with the person who's calling on the phone. You really need to make sure that your responders can be safe or are prepared for anything that may be going on there. I know, scene safety, I always used to preach scene safety when I was dispatching. And, that's no different now. I take it very seriously, and making sure that you add information about scene safety is super important. Not only that, it gives you an opportunity to learn from mistakes. So everybody makes mistakes, and I still remember the first time a supervisor did QA on me. I was like, I've been dispatching a long time. I had 7-8 years in there. I don't need QA. And wow, when she gave me back all of my QA sheets and I realized that I hadn't verified information on most of those calls, I learned my lesson real quick and made some changes. So QA can definitely identify trends. It may show areas where you need improvement. It also objectively measures performance. You can also catch your dispatchers doing something great. You could do QA and go through and find out somebody was doing CPR and got a return to circulation. That's life-saving. They need to be recognized just as much as the people physically on the scene are recognized for that type of thing. You can learn that from QA, but you can also structure your training to help take care of issues that you find when you identify trends in areas for improvement. It also elevates your standard of care and reduces liability exposure. Let me say that again. It reduces your liability exposure. That is a huge issue. A lot of agencies are concerned about liability, especially nowadays. We live in a sue-happy society, and it just really makes a big difference. So you want to make sure that you do what you can to reduce your liability exposure. Larry, did you have something that you wanted to add in?
Yeah, just along the lines of QA and reducing liability exposure, one thing that Powerphone does have is a training mode. Just on real time after you take a call that just didn't seem to go as smooth as you would like. As soon as you disconnect, you can go straight into a training mode through Powerphone and go through that protocol while it's still fresh in your mind and become very familiar with it. So that way, next time you take a call, you can already self-improve right on the spot.
That is fantastic. And yeah, that's a great way to handle that type of situation. And another thing is the public really expects a lot from dispatchers. I think it was 1989 when Rescue 911 came on TV, and William Shatner, he told all of these great stories, and they interviewed all these victims or, people who were saved because of 911 dispatchers. And that created a huge expectation. And that's what people expect. They expect that they're going to call 911. They're going to find somebody on the phone who knows exactly what to tell them to do to stay safe, save their life, whatever it may be. So that really raised the bar for what's expected of 911 dispatchers. So having protocols in place helps meet those public expectations as well. So there are some reasons that some agencies or people don't want to use protocols. Some agencies or some people believe that there's a forced path of questioning that's not realistic. I couldn't agree more that there are absolutely times where you can't script a 911 call. No two calls are the same. So you can't have a path of questioning that's always going to fit in suit. Some people also believe that it delays dispatch. Well, I can tell you, and I have been asked about this before, but dispatchers are multitaskers. So there is nothing wrong with, as you're going through questions, telling your caller, hold on just a second, let me get units on the way to you. And I've got some more questions, so please don't hang up. You still dispatch when you were planning on, when you would normally dispatch. It doesn't delay it. It just gathers more information. Then you update your responders while they're on the way. Some people think the workflows are cumbersome. As technology changes, going more to computer programs and away from flip charts, I know that makes a big difference. When you get something that just flows from question to question, it makes it super easy. So that's something to also look out for. And some people believe that the content isn't relevant. So sometimes you may get questions because when you have a protocol situation, you've got to do the best you can as far as figuring out what should be asked. Well, there may be questions that are completely irrelevant. And I know we allow you to skip something that's completely irrelevant. We don't want you to sound like an idiot on the phone, basically, by asking something, that's just off the wall that may apply to one situation, but clearly doesn't apply to this one. And some people think it increases your liability. Some agencies, some cities, I have seen it a lot in my career, where they think it actually increases liability to have protocols and to provide instructions. But the problem is the standard and the accepted expectation is that they're going to provide those instructions. So I've been on the receiving end of that call where the mother said, tell me what to do. And I couldn't because I worked for an agency that didn't have instructions. So then she called my boss later and said, why didn't she tell me what to do? And he had to explain that we didn't have anything structured. So, not having to explain that, not having to answer those questions goes a long way. The public expects instructions when they call 911. So, Dennis, we have another poll. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'll pop it up right now. We'll give everybody a few seconds or minute or two to answer this. So you should see on that poll tab, do you use a protocol system today?
I'd love to hear these answers. I'd love to see these results.
Yep. Like I said, we'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll see. Looks like 85% of people have staffing issues too.
Only 85?
Yeah, 85. That's actually going up, so people are seeing it.
Yes. Do you want me to move on and then we'll come back to the protocols?
No, we'll just go through the results right now. It looks like 25% no, they're not using any protocol system today. 29% yes for police, fire, and EMD, which is great. And 44% for EMD only.
Okay. All right. So we've got to start with a lot. So that's good. And like we've been saying through this, the industry is changing. There are technology advances, and I talked about that earlier with going from flip charts to computerized, and then you have interfaces with CAD systems, so that way it puts all the information in the CAD for you. Then there's non-traditional call types. So you can't build a structured system with every possible call type. Somebody in Florida doesn't necessarily need a procedure for responding to an incident on ice fishing, whereas somebody in Minnesota doesn't necessarily need a procedure for responding to reports of alligators. So those are kind of examples of some maybe not traditional everywhere call types that an agency may need some assistance on. I know I talked in the blog about that we did a few weeks ago about some of the protocols that I've helped write. I even was at an agency yesterday and we wrote a protocol from scratch that agency needed. So, every agency is different and their needs are different. And so you've got some different call types that one may need and another doesn't. And that's okay. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Not only that, but staffing and responder shortages. They're a real issue. Another thing actually that just popped back in my head about QA is something about responder shortages is the stress of the job and the toll that it takes on you mentally. It's not easy. And another thing about QA is you could potentially even find out that somebody has a particular call type that they're struggling with. Maybe they've got some PTSD or just trauma from a previous call or something in their personal lives, and it's affecting their ability to take that type of call. Well, you don't know what kind of call is going to be on the other end of that line. So that's something that somebody might need some help with. So even from the aspect of helping your dispatchers get the help that they may need, that's something else that can be identified through this. That could also keep your staffing shortages not quite so bad. Like I said, responder shortages, that also creates longer wait times for callers, which increases your call volume because they keep calling back wanting to know where the help is. There's also an increased focus on budget and professionalism in the center. Like I said, dispatchers have this whole new expectation and the public expects certain things. And you need to be able to reach that level of professionalism in your center. But at the same time, budget's a killer. And a lot of places don't necessarily put budget for dispatch up there at the top. So that's something else that has to be, it's another challenge. The bottom line, though, is protocols must change along with the industry. Like I said, as the public expects more, we need to make sure that the protocols are changing. And not only that, with changes in science and advancement, there may be changes even in society that we have to make changes in the way we deal with protocols because of that. So now we're getting into some of this. The principles of a 21st century protocol system. I mean, what are they? What is it that you should really have? One of them is guided flexibility. And we love that term here. It's fun to use. Guided flexibility is basically you're giving them a guide, but they need to be able to make changes as necessary for the circumstances. But you have a foundation, and that foundation definitely empowers the call takers to do their jobs more effectively, but then they can also use their knowledge to affect and improve that call process. Gives you streamlined workflows, but bottom line is protocol and CAD vendors, we all really have to do better with our interfaces between each other. So that way it's as few extra steps for the dispatchers as possible so they're more apt to use it. Dispatch decisions really have to be realistic and in line with agency resources and capabilities. You don't want a system that's going to tell you that you need to send a ladder truck if you don't have one in your agency. You don't want a system to tell you that you have 5 different response levels when you have 1 or 2. So those are things that you want to be able to make adjustments to in order to have the system work for your agency. Content really needs to be localized. It needs to be relevant to your area to be effective. Like I said about the ice fishing and the alligators. I mean, that makes a big difference. And you want it to be effective. If people look in and they see stuff and they're like, we're never going to use this, well, that's just going to discourage some of your dispatchers as far as buy-in. So you really want to make sure that they're localized and relevant. I mean, think about what you have in your area and what kind of protocols you need for your unique situations in your area. Not only that, you have to be able to make changes quickly with protocols. That's one advantage of being able to customize it. So COVID-19 hit, and it seemed like it hit from out of the blue. And all of a sudden, dispatchers had to start asking questions to pre-screen for responder safety. Well, Powerphone responded to that and added infectious disease protocols in some of the infectious disease procedure, in some of the protocols that we have. But then it can still be brought up for anything. Well, that helped as we were all adjusting to the COVID-19 issues that we've been having the last year and a half. Changes in local, state, and federal statutes, that's a huge thing. So, Larry, you talked about TCPR, and another thing is mental health calls. I know here in Virginia, and I want to say maybe Minnesota was the other state, but definitely in Virginia, they've passed laws that are going to require that they have mental health people respond on certain call types. Well, you've got to have a protocol for that because the call's still going to go to 911. And then what does the 911 dispatcher do with that call since you can't send police once that goes into effect? So being able to adjust a procedure or a protocol specifically for something like that is a great benefit and advantage to your agency and to your dispatchers because they know how it's supposed to work. So protocol and procedural content, it should always support the unique operating requirements of the center. That's the whole purpose and point of customizing. Do you have a mountain range with hiking trails in your area? Do you have a river where you have a lot of tourists come and they get lost? These are things that you need to take into account. This also drives call taker adoption by localizing the content. If you customize your system to your agency's needs, it's going to go a long way with buy-in. If the dispatchers see, oh, wow, this is something that we deal with a lot, and this will be a really big help. We also want to breed the every call mentality. We're really trying to improve standard of care with this customization. We want to see agencies not just making sure that you are standardized for your 911 emergency calls, but people call for everything into the 911 center. Oh, you've repossessed a car? We need to log it. How do we go about doing that? It could really be anything. So being able to customize those types of situations, it makes a big difference for the agencies because then they make sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. It also addresses specific requirements of responders. So if you have your responder system is set up where they only respond with one response to all medical calls, you don't have to change and make it 3 different types. You can just set it up for one. It's information like that that really makes a big difference to the responders, and it helps when you're trying to integrate a system into something that already exists. And then they also can learn and adapt, or rather we learn, and the protocols can adapt with your changing needs. So just like with COVID, needs changed, the protocols changed. If you live in an area where they can, where you've had a major, for instance, warehouse come into your area. I know we've had those happen. And then you may need to adjust your responses for a huge, massive warehouse because, if it's on fire, then you need to add, maybe a second alarm all the time. These are things that we can do. Larry, do you want to talk a little bit about protocol customization and some of what you've done?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's more examples to customization with our center, but the two that come to mind, one is a fall call. Our agency requested that we have a question added to the protocol about how much the patient weighs, because depending on that, how much they weigh dictates who all we're sending. And on a typical fall call, we just send an ambulance. But if their weight meets a certain threshold, we have to send a fire engine for manpower to assist with the lifting. So Powerphone worked really well with us to customize the fall call, and we added a question about the weight. We asked how much does the person weigh, and if it meets that threshold, the response advisor level will let the person dispatching the call know, okay, this meets that threshold, add a fire engine to this dispatch. So that's helped us out with that response. And another one, just a couple months ago, we responded out on a garbage truck fire. And a lot of the garbage trucks these days run on a different fuel source than gasoline. So after this incident, the fire department was asking if we could start having our dispatchers ask what fuel source the vehicle uses. So once again, Powerphone was able to customize a specific question under primary questions, asking what is the fuel source. And then we have several different options to pick from, whether it's electric, because we're starting to see more electric vehicles, natural gas, propane, ethanol, hydrogen as well. Those are all up and coming. So that's another way of customization of how it helps the safety of our responders and getting care and the resources in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's really great, Larry. I've had agencies as well with the weight. I had one agency that wanted to add the weight question for every single medical call, and we were able to do that for them. So yeah, I mean, we want to meet the local requirements. What's information that the responders need to adjust, rather than getting there and, oh, we need more people now. It'd be nice to go ahead and have them on the way. So that's really great, Larry. More about custom protocols. You know, you can embed your center's SOPs directly within the protocols. So there's the operating procedures for the responders, but there's also operating procedures within the center. And you may have, a certain procedure. For one that comes to mind for an agency I worked for was somebody has locked their keys in their car. Well, we would respond under certain circumstances. Being able to customize that particular protocol would allow an agency to ask those questions that are part of their SOPs to help determine if it's something they're going to respond to or not. And that avoids the issue of somebody potentially just entering the call and not telling them, oh yeah, we can't go, and then somebody wants to call back or has to be called back, and that creates more work. So it streamlines everything. And then again, just like Larry was saying about the fuel sources, dispatch recommendations can be tied to agency response plans. So it can suggest that you send all of your correct resources, including utilities. If you dispatch for utilities, I know we have a lot of customers out there who do. I know my last agency, we would dispatch for the electric department after hours. So those are other things that can be tied into this and added. It's not just about the questions. You want to be able to adjust your responses too, based on those answers. You can set up alerts based on environmental conditions too. So if you have, an example could be hazmat. So if you've got hazardous materials at a specific location, you may want to provide alerts and additional information that can be added. And you want to be able to modify existing protocols to reflect your agency or statutory requirements. Like I was saying about the mental health calls, with changes in the laws, that's going to have a huge impact on how those calls are handled. So being able to modify your protocols as those laws go into effect at your specific agency can go a long way, because not everybody in the country is, creating these other responses for mental health. So that's something that, being able to make those adjustments for your agency and how you're handling it can make a huge difference and just be a game changer for you. You also want to create new protocols. It allows you to create new protocols for your center's operating environment. So not just those 911 emergency calls. What about your non-emergency calls? Things about people need help with various things that might not necessarily be police, but maybe you need to help them get in touch with mental health resources or social services resources or tow truck information. Those are things that can be customized so that way your agency can answer those questions in a significantly more professional manner and consistent. Consistency is huge. You don't want somebody calling and getting one answer and then they call 2 hours later and the answer is different. You want everybody providing the same information. You can also create new protocols for a special event, festivals, concerts, things like that. Weather. So, you've got tornadoes, hurricanes. I'm sorry if I'm jinxing anybody. Snowstorms, earthquakes, all of those things can have an effect on how people respond to these to emergencies during these events. Not only that, topographical. I talked about before, gave examples of rivers with a lot of tourists and hikers, along, for instance, the Appalachian Trail. That can make a big difference, and you may need specific protocols for those types of things, and also seasonal specific protocols. Again, we're talking about the ice fishing. Probably not a big issue in July, but when they need it, they need it. So those are things where you might change some of your protocols around depending on the time of year, as well as some of your procedures. It allows you to promote greater engagement with local medical control, rather than a medical control or medical director saying, and even though we have a medical director, you could have a medical director locally that wants to sign off as well. And they say, yeah, I don't want you to give those instructions because I don't like this sentence. Well, if that medical director wants a sentence restructured, that can be done because they're willing to sign off on it. We can change those medical instructions that are provided. Then you've got your non-traditional centers as well. It's not just 911 dispatching. We've also got, airports, military bases, schools, corporate security. All of those things make a big difference as far as what kind of protocols they may need or are more likely to need at their agency. So you want to make sure that protocols can accommodate for all of those issues. Did you have any more to add to that, Larry?
I don't, other than you guys have worked really well with us with any customization that we needed.
Thank you. And just remember, everybody, it's not just EMD. Protocols can and should apply to every call, not just the EMD calls. Localizing content, that will drive greater adoption. It creates more consistency across all the call types. It's going to improve your standard of care, and that improves the service to your callers and your responders. So, questions. Do we have any questions out there?
So yeah, we can go through a few of the questions. We'll just start off with Larry. You got a question. Let's go with, does your agency determine the weight criteria that you're talking about with your custom protocol to dispatch fire for assistance?
Yeah, we do. Our threshold is 150 pounds. So that's the specific question is, do they weigh more or less than 150 pounds? And if you choose over 150, it automatically does the response advisor for one additional fire engine to respond.
Okay. So from Chris Hunter, do protocols work for seasoned dispatchers, or are they primarily for new staff members?
Oh, protocols are awesome for both, really. To get buy-in, you really want to make sure that your seasoned dispatchers understand that this is being done with them in mind. You want them to be able to use the information and knowledge that they have. You don't want to take that away and make it so structured and strict that they don't have the ability to go off and use information that they already have. So that is something that's key on your seasoned dispatchers, is to make sure that they understand that you need to, you want to use them and their knowledge. They can also help create those protocols. Getting their assistance. I know I've sat in an agency before working on a protocol and a procedure and had a dispatcher from the agency standing over my shoulder saying, yeah, I like that. Hey, we need to add this information. That makes a big difference on buy-in too, when you have your seasoned dispatchers who are helping you create those protocols, because they understand the process and what you're trying to do for them, and they get that.
And one thing about the seasoned dispatchers as well is it's not verbatim. The questions don't have to be asked verbatim. It's materialistic, similar.
So John and Chris also have a similar question. We'll go with John's right now. You mentioned about no delay in dispatching using Powerphone protocols. Does that apply to both the dispatcher taking the call as well as to the one dispatching? In other words, can the call be marked ready to dispatch quickly?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and at least with Powerphone, I can only speak to those protocols. Powerphone protocols, you can, by the end of your primary questions, you're going to have a dispatch recommendation. In most cases, it's sooner than that. If you have a high priority call, something with someone not breathing, you know that right away, you can go ahead and route it for dispatch and start right with your instructions right away.
Okay. And the other question that we'll be asking is about what happens when computers go down and you can't access the protocols. You probably get asked that a lot, Erin.
Yeah. So if a server goes down, our particular product has replication, so it will continue to work as long as you have power to the workstation that they're working on. If the computers go down altogether and you have absolutely no computer technology, quite honestly, because we don't keep up and update our flip charts anymore, it's not a reliable backup. It's difficult to keep those up to date all the time because you're relying on the agencies to then make sure that they update it if you send it out. Really, you kind of have bigger problems. But you also hope that you also, in that case, you want to think about your dispatchers who are using those protocols every day. It becomes second nature. I can tell you from my personal experience, my daughter she was about 4 years old and ran into a corner and was bleeding from her head. And I'm jumping, my husband called me, come home quick. And I'm jumping in the car to go home. And off the top of my head, I'm rattling off all of the word for word, the bleeding control instructions. So that's something that, it becomes ingrained in you when you're using it all the time. So that's where you rely on them consistently using what you have. So that way they can rely on it in the event that they don't have it available because it's already consistent.
And we would hope that all of these centers have some nice generators to back up. Yeah.
Like I said, with us, as long as you have power, you're good.
Yep.
For up to 5 days.
All right. And Angela, I know you have a question about adjustments with the protocols. We'll have somebody reach out to you afterwards for sure in regards to that. So if there's any other questions, please put it in the question tab so I can see it right in front of me, not the chat tab. You see it to the right? We'll wait one more minute.
Yeah, but in regards to adjustments, for us, when we wanted to make that adjustment, we just made a quick phone call, and you guys worked really quick with us to get those changes made.
And Bud, I guess we can ask that question. Does Powerphone charge for customizations, I guess?
It depends really on the extent of it. And if it's
we can get to him about those kind of questions offline. So if they want to reach out to us, you could just visit powerphone.com and just sign up for somebody to get to you within that day. Yep. If not, we can reach out to you right after this webinar.
And I think we were also putting up, now that I think about it, I didn't share that last slide. It's got my email address. You can also feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, pop that up so people can write it down.
All right, let's see. Sorry, it's a few clicks to get to it. All right, went too far. All right, there we go. So the webinar is going to be emailed to everybody today. So be sure to double check your junk or clutter because sometimes large emails go to that. Like Dennis said, powerphone.com has a multitude of resources. We're really proud of our new website. And also feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is up here, ewinslow@powerphone.com. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to help you, or if I don't have the answer, we'll get you in the right direction so that you can get the answer. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Ooh, Aaron.
Yes.
John Gray put up a good question.
Okay.
And I think you would be perfect to answer this.
Okay.
If you had to name one thing, what would distinguish Powerphone from all other call-taking software?
Oh, it's absolutely, without a doubt, the ability. It's a cross between the ability to customize and the guided flexibility, the no requirement for word questions. You can skip what's not applicable and you can add something that is. And adding that extra question that might not be on the script could be life-saving.
Larry, do you have anything to add regards to that?
Yeah, the way it's laid out, it's like tab-based for different parts of the protocol. So if you know something's down the road in the questioning because you're so familiar with the protocols, you can jump over to it real quick into like pre-arrival instructions and give those instructions, do that patient care, and then come back to your primary questions and secondary questions at that point. So there's a lot of, like Aaron says, it's guided workflow. It's flexible. So it empowers the dispatcher to be a dispatcher.
All right, this will be our last question. With that customization, do we still have the Powerphone guarantee?
Yes, absolutely. As long as, of course, obviously, there are some things medically that you need to stick with. Changing instructions around, you need to use caution as far as that and make sure that we assist you with that. But yes, we still will guarantee the product. We still guarantee the work that we put out, and we'll still back you all up.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. Larry and Aaron, thank you both so much for being here. As Aaron mentioned, this webinar will be available at the link that you joined within 5 minutes of this, and you will also be getting an email with that link. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at powerphone.com, or you could email Erin and she'll get you to the right person.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.